All right, what's going on, guys? Hope y'all are doing well. So today is actually my birthday, and I'm about to head out for the weekend. But before I do that, I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys a bit about Halo Infinite, and specifically, we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of crazy Forge mode leaks that have come out for Infinite, and also we're just going to be discussing the state of the game more in general. And this is going to be a pretty important video to discuss, I think. We're going to be talking a lot about the playlist and content updates that we're going to be getting in the relatively distant future, but also with a very big focus on the Forge mode that is coming. Obviously didn't launch with Infinite because it still needs development time, but I really do think it's going to be worth the wait, and you'll see what I mean as we get into the video. But if you guys do enjoy, I would really appreciate a thumbs up regardless, and if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to go ahead and subscribe. That would be literally the best birthday present ever. So anyways, Halo Infinite leakers have been very active recently, sharing everything we know in regards to Forge mode, and even sharing assets and like basically what maps can look like under different settings. And we're going to take a look at all this stuff in just a second, but obviously it's unfortunate that Forge mode didn't release with Halo Infinite when the game came out, and obviously that's kind of been a first for the series in a sense where it didn't ship with the game. And Forge mode is one of those things that brings in a ton of players each and every single time, and it seems like the reason that Forge mode didn't launch with Infinite was this mode is ridiculously hard to develop, so it can't even be within the first few seasons. And obviously with the level and polish and detail that's required for Forge mode to be up to par, I can kind of understand where that's coming from. Obviously Halo Infinite launched in a very solid state mechanically. You can criticize the lack of content and updates and basically live service that has or hasn't really happened for the game as of yet. That's a totally different story, but at least mechanically, for the most part, the game works really well, and it looks like they want to take the same mentality and approach to Forge mode before it gets added. It's got to be the same level of polish that the rest of the game has. So with that being said, let's take a look at some of this Forge mode content, right? I'm not going to show any video clips, but I'm just going to put some images up on screen and we can draw inferences from here. Now, a lot of these are very telling in terms of what we're going to be seeing more generally in Forge mode. One of the biggest things is the ability to change the weather patterns, also the time of day, and just the general setting. Even the Forge monitor itself looks pretty damn cool, and I'm excited to actually use this when it gets released to the game. It may look a little different when we get it because obviously this is still under development, but this is most likely what it's going to appear like. You know, there are realistic and also serious effects that you can do in Forge mode with Infinite, but there's also like a lot of silly stuff, you know, snowmen and also gingerbread houses. I really do think this iteration of Forge mode is going to be above and beyond anyone we've seen in any past Halo title. My big hope with this stuff is when Forge mode gets released to the game that they have a very streamlined and straightforward way to both post content on Forge and download other people's community content as well. I really do think if they want Halo Infinite to last for years, community content is going to be absolutely key, and I do understand the delay of Forge mode if they want to make sure that it hits when it comes out. And the thing is, of course, we can't even see Forge mode in the game until at least probably Season 3, and at the time of me recording this video, we've not even had Season 2 yet, in which the biggest or one of the biggest content launches for that, of course, is going to be the campaign co-op. And here's the thing, I'm sure the co-op campaign is going to bring in a pretty decent influx of players, as I know that is another huge pull to why a lot of people play Halo in general, but I don't know if it's enough. And what I'm saying is, like, this kind of more plays into the state of the game. I really do think Forge mode is going to bring in more players than anything else for the most part in terms of what we know. But a lot of the Halo rhetoric around the community recently has been pretty much the idea that Halo is just dying. I'm not making a claim that this is true one way or another. I'm simply stating what I've been seeing, and we'll explore that idea a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about that. So over the past few weeks on Twitter, I've been seeing a lot of this stuff specifically over there where like people will post the current Halo Infinite viewer count on Twitch and it'll be like 2,000 people, and like, you know, these small indie games are getting more viewers in Halo Infinite. Obviously it's very easy to cherry pick those kind of stats, but more generally the way I like to judge the or at least one of the metrics I use to determine a game's popularity is just by simply looking at Google search trends. And if we do just that for Halo Infinite, we can see that it certainly has declined quite a lot since its launch, almost to the point of where previously the game hadn't even been released. The reason why Google search trends is in some way a little bit more valid than just comparing, you know, Twitch numbers on a random Monday night. Obviously those can fluctuate tremendously depending on what time of day it is, what events are going on, and in particular who's streaming it, right? That can completely change the position of it. So I don't really like to use that as a metric, but Google search trends is a little bit more, you know, widespread, and I tend to take this into a little bit more of consideration. And also, not to mention, if you do take a look at the player counts on Steam, the numbers have certainly been in decline. Of course, this isn't indicative of the entire player count because you have to take into account Xbox as well, but you can assume that it follows a similar or at least relatively close trend to PC, I imagine. And if you only take into account those stats, for example, it's pretty easy to draw the conclusion that Halo Infinite's dying, that it needs something to revitalize it, or the game is in really bad shape. But let's just go ahead and put this into perspective a little bit. If we compare it to two other games, you can see that it's actually still doing, it's declined, but it's still doing better than both of these games on the list. And again, the only reason I'm comparing it to these is just to give a little bit of perspective. And it's kind of ironic as well, where basically EA and Battlefield 2042 were claiming that Halo Infinite was the reason that their game didn't do so well, because Halo Infinite launched its multiplayer a little bit early and people got a taste for it and it was polished and everything, whereas Battlefield thinks that the players are not as committed or aren't as forgiving to a game that is lacking some polish to some extent. So I just think it's ironic how Battlefield is basically pinning its downfall or its failure on Halo Infinite, which again is really not the case. It's just the game is not so good. But regardless, we can clearly see that Halo Infinite hit some unbelievably high points and it severely declined as well. So the question is, it's gotten there once, can it get back there again? I think the answer to that question is yes. So a lot of people on Twitter saying that the number one reason for this, or the cause of this decline, is the mishandling of ranked mode, because there's been a lot of rhetoric about that recently, and also 343 have tweeted that they are doing a sort of update with the rank reset. This is going to be separate from the content update that we're going to be getting this month as well, so these two, you need to kind of separate them. But in terms of bringing back the huge, massive amount of players that we saw in those Google Trend spikes, especially like around launch, fixing ranked mode or tweaking that is not going to do it, obviously. It's got to be something completely mind-blowing out of the water, and I don't even think that the co-op campaign is going to do that either. And this is where I can kind of sympathize with a lot of the community, being upset or dissatisfied with the treatment of Halo Infinite thus far, in terms of like content updates, and basically being a live service game is great and all, but without the service or without anything substantial to really play months into the game after what has been launched with, then I can see that becoming a little bit of a problem. But at the same time, you either have that situation or you have a Battlefield 2042 where, like, in theory, you might get content quicker, but the content that you launch with is utterly broken and unfun to play. I do think there's a chance that Forge Mode is able to bring back a lot of the players that we saw, especially during launch, or even that second spike that we had shortly after. We could probably get to those sorts of levels again for sure. But here's really where the crux of the matter is at the end of the day. You can continue to foster the, very hardcore MP community that Halo has, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that actually should be one of the top priorities, is keeping that, solid hardcore community of Halo happy. But by the same token, if you still want the game and the community at large to grow, you're gonna have to do things that reach into new categories and reach new people that aren't already part of that community. And I'm not implying anything major here, and I do think Forge Mode could go a long way at bringing either players that dropped off or even just new people in. But at the same time, if you really want 343 to specifically cater to the hardcore Halo community, then you really can't complain that the game is dying or the game's dead, because obviously you're going to shake out the more casual players of the game by that very same nature. But if you want the game to genuinely continue to grow, then you have to have somewhat less hardcore prioritization on the really dedicated, like, Halo experience in some sense. And this is coming from a guy that's really not like a doomer about Halo. I don't think the game is dying. I think it's basically got its community like every other game does, but it follows the natural life cycle of games that launch. You have a huge influx of new players checking it out, and as the game goes on, it shakes out a lot of the casual players, and what's left is the hardcore fan base. This is nothing new. This is the natural path that video games have taken for my entire life, and Halo Infinite or any game that ever comes out in the future is going to be no different. But it's basically like, how much do you want, or like how long do you want its lifespan to be? If you do want Halo Infinite's lifespan to be longer, then some branching out into new things is going to be required. So we'll see what they do in the future. Obviously, Forge Mode is slated for around Season 3, and I really do think that's going to bring back a lot of players, and we're going to see a huge spike in popularity around then. Community content is key for keeping a game alive, but in terms of like other stuff, I really do think that later in the year, we'll probably see some cool things that will also bring players back. I really do hope we see Battle Royale, and I'm going to be proud of saying that. And that's not to imply to take away any support from the multiplayer side of things. I really think they should get that set in stone first and have an unbelievably solid experience before they venture into that, and maybe that's like a project for years down the road or something. I don't know, because they want Halo Infinite to be around for quite a while, and I think it has the legs to do so insofar as they handle it right. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for the video today. I wanted to show you guys Forge mode a little bit, and I just kind of wanted to talk about the state of the game and my opinions on it, because I've been seeing a lot of talk about it on Twitter and just in the broader internet community recently. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Let me know your opinions on the state of the game and what Halo Infinite should do going forward in the future. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great rest of your day. I'm going to go enjoy my weekend, and I will see you guys when I get back. Have a good one. I got to go, and peace out.